The book of Deuteronomy. In particular, we're going to be starting this morning in Deuteronomy chapter 9. And of course, as we've said many times during the opening remarks, this is a re-illustration, a reminder, a re-going over of the events and things that happened to the children of Israel while they wandered in the desert, even back into Egypt, and also God's expectations for them. This is to a new generation. The old generation has passed away. God is preparing this generation to go over into the promised land. So this is a series of discourses that Moses gave to them to remind them that it is by the power of God that they are blessed. And so all types of things have been covered so far. Like I say, it goes all the way back into Egypt while they travel in the desert and things of that nature. And some of this he refers back to like we're going to do today. So a lot to be learned from this. One of the things we've been doing, we've been noticing that some of the things that Moses is telling them, the principle and ideas carried over into the New Testament for us today. So that's kind of real interesting at how we see that a lot of the things in God's heart and mind never changed, okay? Now, the old law changed. It was taken away by the blood of Jesus Christ. But today we find the principles that's laid down about righteousness and goodness in the heart, it still exists. It's kind of like today, a lot of times people think, well, the old was done away with, and it was. But the laws of nature, for example, are still in force just as they were in the first 6 days of the creation. So pretty much that's what has not changed, okay? So the heart and mind of God, the principles of nature and things of that nature have not changed. Eli, this morning we're going to begin reading with you. It'll be from Deuteronomy chapter 9 here in just a minute. So what does it look like? So what does Deuteronomy chapter 9 look like? Excuse me, I've got a runny nose this morning, and excuse me, trying to get congested. So the discussion goes something like this. Moses dissuaded them from their own righteousness. Now what he's going to talk about there is not by your righteousness that I'm doing these things, but it's by my promise and by my will that you drive these nations out. And the promise goes all the way back to Abraham, okay? That God told him that his seed would, the nations of the earth be blessed, that he would give unto his people the promised land, or the land of Canaan, also known as Israel. By rehearsing their rebellion, he's going to talk to them a lot about how their forefathers had rebelled in the wilderness. And what he's doing here, he's teaching a new generation not to do those things that they did. And you know, that's a principle that's carried over today to us. If we want to start taking a look at a few of these principles, the Apostle Paul said to the church at Corinth, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, let's just see if the thought is carried over. And here in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul begins in the first part of the chapter talking about how they should not be ignorant. He's writing to the Corinthians here not to be ignorant of what. And he explains of what, that the children of Israel was delivered by Moses and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and the sea, and the rock that followed them was Christ. So even the Apostle Paul now is reverting back to those events. And one of the reasons he's doing this, notice what he says. Now these, verse 6, now these things were our example to the intent we should not lust after evil things as they lusted. And this is what he's talking to that new generation about. So it makes you kind of wonder if in Paul's, under the inspiration of his pen by the Holy Spirit, wasn't referring back to some of the thoughts here in chapter 9. And so he goes on to tell them in verse 8, neither commit fornication, nor tempt Christ, nor murmur. Now all these things happen unto them for examples that are written for our admonition, upon whom the worlds upon Trust me, it's in there, okay? I got my dentures sealed in pretty good this morning, so let's just back this up a little bit. Now, all these things happen to them for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. And so he tells the church at Corinth these things were written for examples for our admonishment, okay? And notice what else he says about this. It's kind of the principle that Moses is laying down to this new generation of Israel of old, and a principle Paul is showing the Corinthian church there at Corinth. Wherefore, let him think it, he standeth, take heed, lest he fall. Okay? So you can see how he refers back to these events that has transpired here, and that Moses is rehearsing. That's the word I was looking for earlier. That Moses is rehearsing to the children of Israel. And it's going to consist of his prayer for them. Deuteronomy chapter 9, Moses recounts the unworthiness of the Israelites and how, despite their rebellious nature, God's mercy sustained them. Moses also highlights that Israel's ability to conquer the land is not due to their righteousness, but because of the wickedness of the nations and because of God's promises. If we make it to heaven today, will it be because of our own righteousness? No. No. It's because the mercy of God, and Jesus Christ came and died and shed his blood for our sins, won't it? Okay? It won't be anything I've done. I didn't shed my blood for the remission of sin. Did you, Daniel? Okay? Can I work my way into heaven and forget about all this other? I can't, can I? So it's not by my righteousness I was saved. It's really by the grace of God. Eli, would you read verses 1 through 3, please?
Hear, O Israel, you are not to cross over the Jordan. You are to cross over the Jordan today, and go in and depossess nations greater and mightier than yourselves, cities great and fortified up to heaven, a people great and tall, the descendants of Anakim, who you know and whom you've heard it say, who can stand before the descendants of Achan? Therefore, understand today that the Lord your God is he who goes before you as a consuming fire. He will destroy them and bring them down before you. So you shall drive them out and destroy them quickly, as the Lord has said to you.
Okay, so here we find that Moses is rehearsing to the children of Israel and reminding them that, hey, I realize that these nations are great and strong that face you. But you go over and possess that land because I'm going to give it to you. And so for them to possess that land, they had to trust in God, didn't they? To drive them out. And we talked about the Anakims, the giants, and Nephilims, so they're referred to sometimes. And I won't go back through all that. But anyway, there were some big people in the land, wasn't there? Okay? And so when the spies went over and saw that, one of the statements that was made is, we look like grasshoppers to these people. And you know, I think, I'm trying to remember who preached a lesson on it. God only needs one grasshopper to conquer a nation. So I can't remember where that came from, but it was a lesson taught on that years ago. So, but anyway, we find that this is a shadow of what we face today as a Christian. A lot of times in people's lives, the obeying the gospel can be a challenge, can it? Because when they begin to realize what's going on, look at how many mountains is in front of me, okay? But if you do what God says and obey the gospel, he'll help you conquer those mountains, okay? And if you remain faithful, you'll conquer one mountain at a time till the next thing you know, you've over the mountain and started down into the valley. So kind of a shadow of that, because these nations, as we talked about, represent sin, don't they? And we talked about the 7 nations in this land, the 7 sins that it represents. And so we find that God said that he was going to do this. He was going to give it to them. Doesn't matter how big the fence is, doesn't matter how strong the city is, it can be fenced up to heaven. So is that not something that we can learn? It doesn't matter what the challenge is. If God's with us, guess what? The obstacle can go all the way up to the heavens, if you will. But if we trust in God, guess what? We can conquer it, can't we? So there's a lot of teaching and parallel thoughts in this. And so he wanted them to understand something, that the Lord thy God, he goeth over before thee. As a consuming fire, he shall destroy them and bring them down. So God's going to go before you. He's a consuming fire. Is that a new thought that was brought about in the New Testament, or is that something maybe here again the writer of Hebrews may be referring back to? In Hebrews chapter 12, in verse 29, notice what the writer here says. For our God is a consuming fire. Same thought, isn't it? A consuming fire does what? It's destructive, isn't it? You take a fire that is started on something and it burns, it destroys it, doesn't it? Okay? So this is what the idea and thought is here about God being a consuming fire. He can destroy those cities, can't he? He can destroy those cities for you. Okay, so will God consume sin by fire? Yes. Now what's the warning for us today? If we continue in sin, are we going to be consumed by fire one day if we don't make those things right? Yeah. Same principle, isn't it? It's the same thought. One's physical, one's spiritual. So we find that he's rehearsing this back unto them. So they have the promise of victory. Do we have the promise of victory today? Yeah. What do we got to do? Remain faithful. What do they have to do? Remain faithful, didn't they? And go in and do what God said do, didn't they? So it's the same thought pattern that we see today in the church. The Israelites are reminded they will soon face larger and stronger nations. But they should not be afraid, because God will be the one to defeat them. There's a lesson series out there, and I downloaded it. You might hear it sometimes by the Glasgow Church, not because of your righteousness. It's taken from this Deuteronomy chapter 9 and verse 5, okay? And I thought that was kind of fit in with this, okay? So God speaks to talk to them about the righteousness, verses 4 through 6. Eric, have you got that? Not because of Israel's righteousness.
Do not think in your heart after the Lord your God has cast them out before you, saying, because of my righteousness, the Lord has brought me in to possess this land. But it is because of the wickedness of these nations that the Lord is driving them out from before you. It is not because of your righteousness or the uprightness of your heart that you go in to possess their land, but because of the wickedness of these nations that the Lord your God drives them out from before you, and that he may fulfill the word which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Therefore understand that the Lord your God has not given you this good land to possess because of your righteousness, for you are still people.
Okay, so God's warning him about self-righteousness, isn't he? Okay, that, and when we stop and think about it, in Luke chapter 18, we have an example of what he's talking about here for us today. Remember, we're looking at some of the types and shadows that's here. So I have to look back, I forgot. Luke 18. Okay, and we know the story, okay? But it goes like this. Two men went up into the temple to pray. The one a Pharisee, the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I'm not as other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this man standing over here. I'm not like him, Lord, I'm better than him, okay? I fast twice a week. I give tithes all that I possess. Look at what all I've done, Lord. So my righteousness ought to be accepted of you. I've done all this, okay? But notice this. And the publican, verse 13, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner. What did the publican have? Humbleness and humility, didn't he, Harry? Yeah. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalts himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. And I can tell you that maybe this thought Jesus is talking about is coming from Isaiah the prophets in Isaiah chapter 5. We're not going to turn there, but Israel was warned of that very thing, about them exalting themselves and they would become abased. So a lot of thought here goes into this. Turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 10 in verse 12. Okay. For we dare not make ourselves of the number or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves. Okay? We're not to be like it. But they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. So really, you kind of get the picture, Reed, of maybe keeping up with the Joneses, always in competition, always comparing, always trying to be one up on somebody else, comparing themselves. And, with the church of Corinth, we have to remember there were some issues going on amongst the brethren there anyway. So you kind of have to ask yourself a question, were they comparing each other's righteousness? Well, my righteousness, Eric, is better than your righteousness. Look at me. Look at who I am. Okay? So you can see that thought in that too. Okay? So warned against that, aren't we? So Israel was warned against that about being self-righteous. He said this in verse 4, speak not thou in thine heart. I don't know if it's in this presentation or the next one, in chapter 10. I got some bullet points about the heart. He's going to keep bringing up the heart. Remember, and I'm just going to use Exodus chapter 20 and Exodus 35. What was one of the things God kept telling them about when they bring their offering to build the tabernacle? Whosoever is of a willing heart. That's repeated over and over. And you say, well, I thought it was all about circumcision. Well, it is. That was really an outward sign that they were the people of God, wasn't it? They were circumcised the 8th day, okay? And that's true, that they were born into that covenant relationship, and that was symbolic of that relationship. But what you're going to find, guess what God's always required? The circumcision of the heart, okay? He says, whosoever is willing, okay? Kind of today, thought pattern, Jeff. How do we give today? Of a willing heart, of a willing mind, okay? It's not a necessity, okay? And that's what he's telling in here, and we'll get more into that. I'm not sure if it's at the end of this presentation or if it's in number 10, but there's a whole lot said that God told them about your service to me must be from the heart. It's kind of like the old adage, 1 Samuel chapter 20, where Saul was supposed to go down and utterly destroy the Amalekites, and he brought King Agag and the cattle and all back alive. And what did old Samuel tell him? To obey is better than to sacrifice. And I think we had a pretty good discussion on that Wednesday night about obedience and sacrificing. Daniel, it gets back to this point here. You can sacrifice all day long. But if you're not obedient, what good is it? Jesus, when he painted the picture at the judgment, said there were those that's going to say unto me, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? In thy name have we not cast out demons? Have we not done many wonderful works in your name? Look at the righteousness, Jeff, I've done. Now, I got to go to heaven. What did he say? Depart from me, ye that work iniquity, for I never knew you. Why is that? They were doing all these things, but they weren't doing it in obedience, you see. They were trying to work their way into heaven. And that's a danger. That's a danger in the religious world. It's a danger in the church too, because I'm afraid sometimes with all the different aspects that's going on in the church, there's people are still forgot it's not by their righteousness they're going to make it. I don't care how many programs you got. It's through obedience, isn't it? So anyway, thought that was real interesting about that. So we find that he said that it's not for your righteousness I'm going to do this. He said, one, I'm going to destroy sin, and two, it's because of the promise that was made. Okay, so any of your brethren got any comment on that? Moses emphasized that their victory isn't due to their righteousness. How do we have victory over sin today? Is it because I can stand the devil eye to eye, toe to toe, and I can fight him off and ward him off and all that kind of stuff, and I can do it myself? Now, if I go toe to toe with the devil, somebody's going to wind up like a meat grinder. Guess who's going to be the meat in the grinder, Daniel? Me. So I have to take a step back and say, hey, I got to put Jesus here in the front, huh? I got to put the Word. He can defeat him. Okay, so, and this is the idea that we're getting here. It's not my righteousness that can defeat him. It's the righteousness of God, the Word of God, that can defeat him. Moses emphasized that their victory isn't due to their righteousness, but due to the wickedness of other nations, and God's promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that was, in thy seed many nations would be blessed. And that was, prophecy foretelling Jesus Christ. Verses 7 and 8, remembering past rebellions. Jeff, have you got that?
Remember and do not forget how you provoked the Lord your God to the wrath in the wilderness, from the day you came out of the land of Egypt until you came to this place. You have been rebellious against the Lord. Even at Horeb, you provoked the Lord with wrath, and the Lord was so angry with you that he was ready to destroy you.
He's rehearsing that, and God was several times. He wanted to do what to them? As we studied the book of Exodus and the book of Numbers, what did he want to do? Because of that, he wanted to wipe them out, didn't he? If it hadn't been for Moses being the intercessor between them and sin, what would have happened? He wiped them out. Well, who is our intercessor between us and God today on behalf of our sins? Jesus Christ. Same thought, same principle, okay? So, God wanted to wipe them out. One of the things you notice here, he's telling them, because Jeff, I think you brought it out maybe last week, that some of these people that were under 20 years of age were still alive. The old generation is considered those 20 years of age and above. Under that, you were still considered in a type of child state. I'll just say it that way. I can get a little bit more, but we'll just say it that way. So let's say you were 16 years old when you left Egypt. 40 years later, Eric, you're now 56. So did they say some of this? Yeah. May not, right. Yeah, it depends upon the age you were, right? So, if you was 5 years old, you might not, but yeah, you're right. I mean, they saw this, okay? But notice what he says here. Remember. That's a key word in the Bible. We see that in principle and all more than once, okay? One of the things that you notice about this, and it's really interesting in Matthew chapter 26, after Peter had denied Jesus 3 times, what was one of the things it says that's really interesting about Peter? Verse 75, and Peter remembered the words of the Lord. So his thoughts were stirred up, wasn't he? He was able to remember the words of the Lord. Moses is telling them, remember. Now think back, okay, at all these events that happened. That is in itself should lead you to what? Repentance, right? I'll just say it that way, okay? That should lead you to do what I have commanded you to do. You can remember these things. You've seen these things. But we talked about last week about how easy it is to forget, isn't it? We're human. We forget. I maybe say this too much, but I'll say it again, that There's men out here in this cemetery, by the time they were old men, had forgot more Bible than I'll ever know, okay? I can tell you, there's folks out there that could quote the scriptures backwards, okay? But I'll never be that way. I'll just tell you right now, I'm having a hard time remembering what I'm doing here right now, okay, Eric? Much less whenever, okay? But notice this, what Peter said in writing to the brethren. Peter said, "This second epistle, beloved, I now write unto you, in both which I stir up your pure minds by the way of remembrance." What did he want them to remember? Well, because of false teachers, there was things going around and teachings going around to the point where they're saying, things continue on from the fathers. God's not going to destroy the world. God's not coming again. So on and so forth. And so gradually that kind of teaching will creep in, and it begins to take effect on people if it's not put in check, won't it? So what's Peter doing here? Well, he's kind of putting some things in check, isn't he? And he's talking to the brethren here. "I stir up your pure minds, that you may be mindful of the words which were spoken before by the holy prophets and the commandments of us. Knowing this, that there shall come in last days scoffers or false teachers walking after their own lust." So he's telling them, you need to beware. You need to keep your mind stirred up. You need to be on guard. You need to be on duty. You need to be researching the Word. Why? You'll forget. You'll forget, okay? And we could go to Hebrews chapter 2, and I won't turn there because of time. And it's the same thought that's there in Hebrews chapter 2, the first part of that chapter. So here we have remembering the past rebellions, okay? You need to think about this. What happened when you rebelled? You were punished. And we're going to look at some of that in just a minute, just as a refresher, okay? The Israelites are reminded of their rebellion against God at Horeb, provoking his wrath. Verses 9 through 21 deals with the golden calf incident, and we remember that. Reed, do you have that? And I'll tell you where to stop somewhere in all this, okay?
When I went up to the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant which the Lord had made with you, and I remained on the mountain 40 days and nights. I neither ate bread nor drank water. The Lord gave me the 2 tablets of stone written by the finger of God, and on them were all the words which the Lord had spoken with you at the mountain, from the midst of the fire on the day of the assembly. It came about at the end of 40 days and nights, that the Lord gave me the 2 tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant. And the Lord said to me, "Arise, go down from here quickly, for your people whom you brought out of Egypt have acted corruptly. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them. They have made a molten image for themselves." The Lord spoke further to me, saying, "I have seen this people, and indeed it is a stubborn people. Let me alone, that I may destroy them, and blot out their name from under heaven. And I will make of you a nation mightier and greater than they."
Okay, so you can stop right there. So what's he rehearsing to them now? Remember. See, some of them, they were alive when this event with the golden calf took place. Moses went up in the mountain to receive the 2 tablets of stone written by God, right? Well, God tells him to come down the mountain because you ain't going to believe what these people are up to. So Moses comes down the mountain. What does he see? Well, the people done made him a golden calf and party and all that kind of stuff. And Moses gets wrath and he breaks the 2 tables of stone, doesn't he? Well, he has to go back up there and get them, doesn't he? So, but anyway, he's telling them, remember that. Remember what happened there. Remember how displeased God was. If you remember how we ground up the golden calf and you had to drink of your sins out of the brook, okay? So, all that, if they were 15 years old, 40 years later, 55, you should be able to recall that event, shouldn't you? Okay? As a warning, okay? So this is what he's talking about here. You know, he talks about being provoked. Here again, it makes you wonder if the writer of Hebrews, in Hebrews chapter 3, because he refers back to this event here in the life of the children of Israel. I know I got Hebrews in here somewhere. Okay, Hebrews chapter 3. Notice what it says here. And he's talking about this same thing. He says in verse 8, harden not your hearts as in the day of provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness. So when did they provoke God? Well, they were wandering in the wilderness, didn't they? Okay? When your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my work for 40 years. Now your fathers, and he's talking, the writer here is talking to, of course, people in the church. Their forefathers, which you trace it on back with some of these people, okay? And he goes on to say here, he said, I was grieved with that generation and said they will always err in their heart and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath they shall not enter into my rest. Why? Why was that old generation not allowed to go in? Because of their sins, wasn't it? God's wrath was poured out upon them, so they were not allowed to enter in to the promised land. Will sin keep us out of the promised land today and God's wrath be poured on us at sometimes in the future? Yeah, okay. But notice what he says here in verse 12. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. So, looks like he's referencing this back here to the event that transpired with the children of Israel, doesn't it? When they were doing all that provoking and all that tempting and things of that nature. So he's using them to us today, just like he's using that example to that new generation to do what? Don't provoke God and don't get into an evil heart of unbelief. Amazing how many principles you have to still be, and I'm sure we haven't even touched the hem, okay? I'm just hitting the high points, okay? So, this is what he's talking about here in Hebrews chapter 12. You know, one of the things the Bible refers to time and time again is the 40 days and 40 nights. You know, Moses refers to it, him being on the mount. Jesus was in the wilderness 40 days and 40 nights. The flood was 40 days and 40 nights. So, is there some kind of significance to that thought? And I think we talked about this in one of the Bible classes on Wednesday night. What is the thought behind that? Well, you know, when you take a look at it, you begin to see divine action starting to take place. Okay? Think about the flood. Think about Jesus being in the wilderness and being tempted. That was actually by the will of God, wasn't it? When you stop and think about all this. Okay? So, you got divine action taking place, judgment coming down, and then on the other side of all that, the transformation of the person. You know, Jesus went out into that wilderness 40 days and 40 nights. And when he came out of the wilderness, what is the first thing the devil said to him? Won't you turn these stones to bread and you'll be filled, basically. He didn't do it, did he? How easy would that have been to face temptation? So Jesus had been out in the wilderness in a type of purification process because he had a mission, didn't he? And it was going to be a mission of going to the cross. Think of how on a human level the mindset that we would have to put in ourselves to prepare ourselves for that event here. So it's a preparation, isn't it? Divine preparation. And there's a provision if we make it through it on the other side, isn't it? The blessings of God. And so as you look at these things, it's a purging process, isn't it? We undergo trials. We can look at it from that standpoint of view. It leads to spiritual growth. Those trials do. And a new beginning, doesn't it? As you go through these trials. Okay? So just some thoughts I thought I would pass on about that. And there's some other things in it that we could talk about. Daniel, verses 14 through 21. How about that? Go ahead. Deuteronomy chapter 9, verses 14 through 21.
Let me alone that I may destroy them and blot out their name under heaven. And I will make of you a nation mightier and greater than they. So I turned out and came down from the mountain. And the mountain burned with fire, and the two tablets of the covenant were in my two hands. before yourselves a moldy calf. You had turned aside quickly from the way which the Lord had commanded you. Then I took the 2 tablets and threw them out with my 2 hands and broke them before your eyes. And I fell down before the Lord as at the first. 40 days and 40 nights I neither ate bread nor drank water, because of all of your sin which you committed in doing wickedly in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. For I was afraid of the anger and hot displease with which the Lord was angry with you to destroy you. But the Lord listened to me at that time also. And the Lord was very angry with Aaron and would have destroyed him. So I prayed for Aaron also at the same time. Then I took your sin, the calf which you had made, and burned it with fire, and crushed it, and ground it very small, until it was as fine as dust. And I threw its dust into the brook that ascended from the mountain.
Okay, so here we have, and we have already talked about this, about that golden calf incident. This is a little bit more detail about what Moses saw. God wanted to do what to him? He wanted to destroy him, didn't he? So here we see Moses once again acting as what? An intercessor. That's why when we talk about Moses and Jesus a lot of times, we show that type and shadow that Moses was a type of Christ to come, because he was an intercessor for the people in their sins. Because what God wanted to do, he wanted to destroy them, didn't he? And he said, I'll just raise me up a nation that's even better than y'all. I'll just get rid of y'all, and I'll just raise me up a nation that do what I want to do. But Moses said, hey, wait a minute, don't do that. Okay, bear with us. Just get this people under control and like that. Of course, Moses, he did a really good job of trying to get them under control, but sometimes people just bent, Eric, you know. It looks like they were bent on destruction, Jeff. But anyway, that's another story in a future event. So we have 9 through 21. Moses recounts the incident of the golden calf where Israel sinned grievous against God. He tells how he interceded for them and destroyed the calf, highlighting their extreme unfaithfulness even while Moses was receiving the 10 Commandments. Now, what all had they seen up until this point? A lot. They had seen the gods of Egypt destroyed and them delivered. The Red Sea parted. They had been out in the wilderness. The clothes didn't rot. The feet didn't swell. The shoes didn't rot. God fed them. And what do? We're going to make us a golden calf. Okay? We'll worship that calf. God just let us out here. This was one of the things that they taught Moses. God has let us out here to die. So, and Moses is gone. Who knows where Moses went? Moses is up in this mountain. He's been gone 40 days and 40 nights. Well, why don't we just eat, drink, and be merry before we die? Does that sound kind of familiar? Yeah. It's kind of the mindset today, isn't it, a lot of times? Why don't we just eat, drink, and be merry before we die? And boy, Moses was hot when he come down, wasn't he? He was angry. He cast aside those 2 tablets and broke them. Even God wanted to do what to Aaron? Destroy Aaron, didn't he? Aaron allowed that to happen. Aaron was in charge while Moses was in that mountain. So, I would like to finish this. The rest of this chapter is dealing with different places where they provoke God. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on with this overhead like this. Verses 22 through 24 gives a history of disobedience, okay? That's what he's dealing with there. Moses lists other incidences where the Israelites angered God, emphasizing their constant disobedience. So, in verse 22, he talked about a place called Taberah. So what happened at Taberah? Numbers 11, 1 through 3 states, now the people began complaining openly before the Lord about hardship. When the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed the outskirts of the camp. So we remember that event when we went through the book of Numbers, okay? The people cried out to Moses and prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. So the place was called Taberah because the fire of the Lord had burned among them. So he rehearses that event here in this chapter. What's another event he's going to rehearse to them? Massah, verse 22. All the congregation of the people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of sin by stages, according to the commandments of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses, give us water. And Moses said unto them, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? But the people thirsted for water and grumbled at Moses and said, why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us? Remember what I just said about that? The statement they began to make. Why did you bring us out to kill us? So Moses cried to the Lord, what shall I do with this people? They're almost ready to stone me. And the Lord said to Moses, pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. You shall strike the rock, and water shall come out, and people shall drink. So Moses did so in the sight of the Lord. He called the place Massah Meribah because of the quarreling of the people, and because they had tested the Lord, that he is not among us. So he's rehearsing that event that took place at this location in the wilderness. Kibroth. And I'm not going to try to say all them consonants and all, because I don't have any idea how to pronounce that. So we'll just call it Kibroth, okay? In response to their complaints, God provides them meat. Remember, they complained about not having any meat in the wilderness, okay? Well, God said, I'm going to give you meat, and because of your sin and the way you didn't trust me, I'm going to let you eat it there till you choke on it. Okay? That was their punishment for disobeying. And this is what he says here. And we remember this in Numbers chapter 11, when we went through that. Tell the people, consecrate yourself, for tomorrow you will eat meat because you have wept in the hearing of the Lord. Who will feed us meat? We were better off in Egypt. All the leeks and melons that we had in Egypt. Here we out here in this wilderness. Man, they let us out here to die. We'd rather be in the bondage of sin. Sometimes that happens spiritually in the church, doesn't it? People say, I'd rather be in the bar than in the church. And we see this happen, though. It's the same principle. Therefore, the Lord will give you meat, and you will eat it. You eat it not for 1 or 2 days, not 5 or 10 or 20, but for a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils and it makes you nauseated. That was going to be their punishment, wasn't it? For not trusting God and for complaining and wanting to go back into sin. Kadesh Barnea. During the Exodus, Kadesh Barnea emerges as a major staging point for the Israelites. And we just talked about this in Deuteronomy chapter 1:19. Then we set out from Horeb and went through all the vast and terrifying wilderness you saw, and we reached Kadesh Barnea. So what's significant about it? Well, it was a preparation point, if you look at a map, where they were staging to enter the promised land. From Kadesh, Moses sent 12 spies to scout Canaan, Numbers 13. This established Kadesh as a gateway to the land, underscoring its strategically preserved spiritual position at Israelites' threshold of promise. Spies reporting rebellion. Upon the spies returning, Numbers 13, the people threatened rebellion out of the fear of the Canaanite inhabitants. Their reluctance to trust God, provision at Kadesh led directly to the judgment of 40 years of wandering. Remember that? That was a punishment for not trusting God when the spies came back. We can't do this. We can't take that land. We can't conquer that land. Underscoring the site's association with the pivotal moment of belief. And also at Kadesh Barnea, we have Miriam's death, though. You know, and we talked about Miriam dying there at Kadesh Barnea. Numbers 20 records in the first month the entire congregation entered the wilderness of sin, and the people stayed at Kadesh. Miriam died and was buried, And soon after, Moses struck the rock in disobedience, reflecting a second major failure to the same place where the Israelites had once refused to trust God. So this is what he's rehearsing here, these events. He's going back with some history, telling them, hey, this is what happened here. I don't have to hurry. I'm out of time. Ye have been rebellious against the Lord from the day that I knew you. And it seemed like it's one rebellion after another. And then it winds up with Moses' intercession, the 40 days and 40 nights, interceding for Israel, asking God to spare them despite their sins. Is Jesus interceding the same way today for God to preserve us despite what we do sometimes? Yeah. And let's see. I made it. All right. We'll take a break about 15 minutes and we'll get ready for the worship service. Hey, Jeremiah, y'all going to lead singing? Who's going first? You. Okay.